Hello everybody, welcome to part 2 of the Q&A that I did on my community post and are now answering the questions in this video. Hopefully you think it's interesting and you stick around because there's a pretty interesting question to end off this video. Either way, thanks for watching. Let's get into it. Lost Shore asks your thoughts on FF16 if you had a chance to play it and maybe some of your gaming background like first system, first RPG, favorite games, movies, and books. Okay, so I have not played Final Fantasy 16. I do not have a PlayStation 5 because I decided to buy a Steam Deck instead. And I bought this because I just ultimately knew I was going to get more use out of it than a PlayStation 5. I have a PlayStation 4 and I just never buy games for it. I buy them for PC. Really, I just never buy games at all because when you have, only so much time in the day and I spend most of it creating content and playing gacha games, it's very hard to find times to actually play games. So PlayStation 5 was not in the cards for me. So that kind of loops into this other question though, is like, what are my other favorite games, movies, books and stuff? So I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I read a lot of books. I read every single night for at least 1 hour before bed. And I am currently reading through all of the Timothy Zahn non-canon Star Wars books. But I also recently read the Law Trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. And if you haven't read that, it is absolutely incredible. It's maybe even my favorite fantasy series now over things like Game of Thrones, Witcher, Lord of the Rings. Like I honestly enjoyed it that much. And there's so many more books that I have to get into now. And one of them is being made into a movie at this point. So definitely go check that out. As for my gaming background, I have 4 brothers. 3 of them are older. I have a twin brother. And so I grew up playing these older consoles than the kind of like the era that I would have gotten a console. So I played Super Nintendo. And I played Chrono Trigger, I played FF4, which was called FF2, I played FF6, which was called FF3 back then, and those are the types of games that I played. I always played RPGs. I played Breath of Fire 1, I played Earthbound, Secret of Evermore, Secret of Mana, games like that, and then from there, we became a PlayStation family. So I had PlayStation 1, 2, 3, and so on. Eventually, I got a Switch shared with my brother. But yeah, I've always been kind of an RPG gamer. Okay, so now we have Lax Border 34. So I'm assuming this is somebody that plays lacrosse while skateboarding, which is insane. Given War of the Visions and FFBE share a universe, what are the top FFBE fun facts for War of the Visions players that have never played the other game? And should War of the Visions players play FFBE for the narrative, shared characters, etc.? So I'm actually going to start with the second part of that question because I started FFBE after playing War of the Visions, and I got into it because of the narrative, etc. And so what I'll say is that I very much enjoyed FFBE for multiple years. I loved the story. Season 1 and 2 kind of like felt like an anime where each main character got their time to shine. So season 1 was Rain, season 2 was Laswell, season 3 was all about Fina, and some people didn't like it, but I actually thought there were some pretty sweet plot points in that one. There was just a lot of other stuff that was kind of a lot. And season 4 is back to Rain, and it's very interesting. There's a really cool element of these dual parties where you're going from one party to the other and learning the story about them and kind of alluding to a secret about what's happening later on. And so that's not finished yet, but I'm super enjoying that very much. And I also love the gameplay of that game. Now I'm not playing FFBE anymore. I kind of burnt out on it, but I got a pretty amazing amount of time out of it. Because it's such an old game, there's so much to enjoy as a new player that you can really get into it and enjoy so much, like years of content that you can catch up on and enjoy. And it's not that bad actually catching up as a new player as long as you are doing the story, because you're going to have infinite viz or lapis as they call it to be pulling for units. So in terms of fun facts for War of the Visions players that have never played the other game, to be honest, I can't actually think of anything right now, so we'll just leave it with the first part of that answer. All right, so Cow Puddles 4851 asks, is my understanding that Frost Lord became Gilgamesh? That's why he didn't cross over into Palladia like the other Sworn 8. Is this correct, or is he a totally different person? Have a great vacation. So Palladia is where they came from, and they went into Lapis, and it's weird because he definitely went into Lapis because his armor's there. And when there's actually when Gilgamesh came as a character, a 7-star character to FFBE, they did a little story clip where Gilgamesh meets, the Frost Lord meets Amnelis. They talk, and he gets his new armor. And prior to putting on the Gilgamesh armor, he actually has the Frostlord armor. So it's not super well explained, but basically, and if you don't want spoilers for FFBE, then pause the video or fast forward to the next timestamp. But basically, at some point, Frostlord's armor is left in Lapis, and Rain's dad gets into it and pretends to be Frostlord in order to to test Rain and all of his comrades to see how strong they are and if they're willing, to actually go the distance and solve the conflict. So at some point he did go into Lapis. I don't know when, but it's not super well explained where Amnelis is, because you would assume she is in Palladia and not Lapis, but it's all time travel-y. Who knows? Vincent Cloud asks, what character that is not in War of the Visions from a mainline FF would you like to see? And I think I'd like to see the FF4 main party all get into the game. So Edge and Rydia would have to get there. But also I would really like to see a dual unit of Palamporm, like young Palamporm. They would just kind of like float around each other or something. And they would look like basically like one unit. I think that would be so funny to have that combination, maybe have some healing and have some black magic. But I would also love to see Steiner, and I say Steiner specifically because one, he's like this cool guy in knight in armor, but two, his big face would look so funny, kind of like stomping around a War of the Visions battlefield. I just wouldn't be able to handle it. I think we definitely need him in the game. All right, Shirayuki asks, now that 100 cost is the norm in War of the Visions and some of them have even got a mech kit, do you think that sometime in the near future we will ever get a cost 120 or 150 unit that's so broken it's almost worth 2 unit cost for the slots, 2 slots for PvP? I don't think they're going to do a cost increase anytime soon. I think that they already, well, we know for a fact that they're already implementing kind of like this limit break upgrade system in JP. I think the thing with extra cost units is that the cost system is so broken already that I would rather them see that fixed. Like, if you can balance units, then why can't you balance costs? Now, what I'm talking about here is making like launch URs to 70 cost and maybe making some 90 cost down to 80. Maybe some 100 cost get bumped down to 90. And then maybe in that case, if there was like some absolutely broken 100 costs, maybe they make them 110. But I would like to see a cost balance before I see a new cost unit come out. I'd never want to see a unit that's worth 2. I think that's just less fun to play with us, the units. But then again, you just never know what could happen. I'm sure there'll be some unit that's so strong that we feel like it's that like strong that it could just be them and one other person. That's kind of how Bradley feels sometimes. There's been times where I've killed the 2 units on a team and just Bradley's left. My team, full health, 1 Bradley, and that 1 Bradley, through the way that the AI works, maybe they come along the map and they fight one at a time, ends up winning the whole thing. Of course, when you check that out, it's always a max reincarnated Bradley, but he really is so good, and depending on the AI, can win against some pretty incredible odds. Foxeye Valkyrie asks, have you tried Arknights, and if so, what do you think? And now I actually have not tried Arknights. I do like tower defense. I think it's a really cool concept, but the problem that I have is that I really don't like chibi games. Like, I don't like games where there's the character art and then when you go into the actual gameplay, they're little squat chibi versions of those characters. I'm just super not into it. If they're pixel in the game, like Romancing Saga, or I'm trying to think of that, like Revived Witch or things like that, that's fine. Like War of the Visions is obviously fine for me with the 3D graphics, but for them to be chibi, I'm not into it. I know it's a top-down tower defense, so that kind of excuses it to a certain extent, but basically whenever I look at it, it looks super smooth and super cool. I've just never ever once said or thought to myself, hey, I should try this out. We're going to end off on a doozy, which comes from Bodhi JMS Rider, who is making War of the Visions content, by the way, so go check them out. And the question is it possible for one human to offend another human? Because it seems to me that if a human cannot be insulted by another, only the one who can choose to allow something to be insulting. So basically, if you believe the answer to the first question to be yes, then do you believe that the outside world has the power to disrupt our inner peace? Or do we have the potential to choose the perspective that protect our peace from being disturbed, and no matter the force at hand? So I think about this all the time as a teacher, and I actually went to kind of like a seminar for Pro D that talked a little bit about this, and I think that there is a huge huge issue where people do take offense very easily, and at a certain point you need to not be offended by things. It is your choice to be offended by certain things, and it's a skill that I've actually gotten a lot better at. As somebody who works with kids, sometimes they can say things that are pretty brash or insensitive, or maybe they're just really blunt with you. And when you think about all the perspectives that go into that, and you think, okay, well, how's their day going? You know, are they in a terrible mood, or did something bad happen to them? Are they lashing out? You know, or are they're not considering how I'm feeling or how I would have taken that? And when you put all those things together and you ask yourself, was their intent to hurt me? 99% of the time, the answer is no, they weren't. So why should I be offended? There's also, I've worked with people in the past that are super gruff or rude or kind of, you know, direct with what they want. And maybe the first time I met them, I'm like, oh, this person doesn't like me, or this person, you know, is just an asshole. But you get to know them, or you start to not get offended by it. You don't let it affect you. And you kind of just realize that's the way the person is, and you can develop a relationship with that person. I've done that with people that I've worked with in the past, where other people are like, oh, can't you like that person's always so insulting to me. And I'm like, no, they're fine. That's just the way they talk. Like, they don't actually like hate you or think, you know, like it's nothing. You're choosing to be offended by that. Now, there's of course exceptions. And again, I'm a teacher, right? So it's really tricky because, for example, there's students that we preach to our students that, you know, you just have to ignore bullies. You have to look the other way. You can't let that bug you. You know, why does their opinion matter to you? But none of that works, right? Like the students they still get bullied. They still get offended. They get scared. They don't come to school. So where do we kind of come into a middle ground here that's really healthy for everybody? So first, we cannot get rid of the fact that yes, people need to learn not when to be offended, but when to let things go. And when you let things go, you'll be surprised how much progress you can make and where you can get to. It's incredible. It's a really good skill. I'm really good at it at my job, but I'm really bad at it on YouTube. I take things super personal in comments on YouTube, and it's something I'm very much trying to work on. And I don't know why it's different, but maybe it's because of just the pure, you know, putting myself out there is very scary, but I don't know. I get pretty frustrated. So we have to teach our kids and our students that there are some things that you have to let go. You can't get offended by every little thing. You have to ask yourself, why are you offended? Because half the time it's something that you're projecting onto the other person, or it's something that you're deciding. And when you think about, again, their perspectives and you put them into the equation, really you think, well, why am I offended? But the other side of it is that there are people that don't have this skill, or there's people that are still developing it, like our students. And so in that case, we do have to teach people to be considerate. We have to teach people to look from another person's perspective. If I'm going to be talking to them in a certain way, how is that going to affect them? So I'm not saying that, you know, someone that is really direct should just totally pander to someone and, you know, like tiptoe around them. That's not at all what I'm saying. But what I am trying to get to is basically you shouldn't antagonize somebody. You shouldn't go after somebody's, you know, pet peeve and like really purposely try to piss them off. Because at the end of the day, what are you trying to get out of that? And how are you really supposed to feel if you're making someone else feel bad, if you're frustrating them? Like, for example, if I had someone that was just totally trolling me on YouTube, where does the middle ground come there, where I'm supposed to say to them like, oh, this doesn't offend me, you can just keep posting this? Well, no, I'm gonna, like, at a certain point, if it's just, you know, disparaging me, I'm just gonna block them and I'll move on. I'm not gonna be offended because they're crazy, but also, you know, they can't just continue to do that either. So I've just been rambling for the last 5 minutes. I did not prep for this question. I'm just answering it off the top of my head. So I apologize if it's not clear, but basically my answer is that both things are really important. I strongly urge people to look into the power of letting things go and how good that can be for you, to just not be offended by things, it honestly, it makes such a huge difference in your life. And if you're at your work, wherever you are, it's going to be something that you can practice. And there's going to be times where you do a really good job of not letting something go, and then 30 minutes later you go and you talk to the person about it, but you got closer, right? And maybe the next time you wait a whole day and you're like, look, I let it go. I didn't get credit for this, or I didn't get to say my last like few words, and they just kind of like left me hanging. But at the end of the day, what are you fighting for? What are you winning? Or what kind of clout are you getting in an argument like that? Or if somebody did insult you, then why do they need to know if you disagree or that they hurt your feelings? Because if they insulted you, they probably expected your feelings to be hurt. So you can just let that go. But at the same time, we have to treat empathy. We don't ever know kind of what state somebody has just walked into. Like I'm going to go on another tangent here. But for example, if I have somebody that comes in super late to my class, I never get mad at them or call them out for being late. I smile at them and I say, hey, welcome to class. How you doing? And that's not what they're expecting. They might be thinking, oh man, I'm good. Or I'm not good. I've missed my bus and I didn't get breakfast yet. I'm starving. I had a terrible sleep, like whatever it is. Because what I want them to think about is when I got into this school, I was welcomed and they wanted me to be there, not because it's a self-feeding cycle. If they are late all the time and everyone's mad at them for being late, and sure, they could be mad at them for being late because they're disrupting the class, then it feeds into the cycle of where, well, I don't like school. I'm not going to go. I'm going to be late again. I'm going to just spend less time there. But if you're welcoming people and you're getting them in there, then maybe they're going to think, well, I want to get to Mr. Mysidia's class because he wants me there and I'm welcome there. And then at a later time in that class, I can kind of talk to him and I can say, hey, it's pretty important for you to be on time. And there's a couple of reasons why. It affects the other students' learning, but it also affects your learning. It affects I plan for you to be here and for the class, and so it's kind of tough on me when you're not here, and I want you to be here, and so on. And you can have that conversation when the person's ready for it, and they're not feeling in trouble or accused or put on the spot in front of everybody. So that's just another example of kind of like think about the perspective of other people when you're deciding what you're going to do, because half the time we just think from our own perspective. Okay, Bodhi, I hope that was an okay answer. I don't know. That would be a really fun one to talk about more on Discord. So hit me up if you want to chat about that. But otherwise, thank you so much for everybody for watching. This was a long video, big old Q&A. We'll see how many people get to the end. But if you did, thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you all soon in another video.